Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Secrets of a Witch podcast with me, Sabrina Scott. On this podcast, I talk about life, love, healing, spirituality, mediumship, tarot, feminine energy, and lots of other things, as well as everything in between all of the other things. We just talk about everything up in this podcast because ultimately witchcraft and energy and spirituality and vibes, all of that is intertwined with everything else, and witches need to live good lives too, right? And it's not just witchcraft that gets us there. It's a balance of that as well as so many other things. And so that is what today's episode is going to be about, one of those things. But first, I wanted to remind you guys to mark your calendars for the Feminine Energy Without Bullshit mega course that is launching on Monday, November 13th for the new moon. Enrollment will be open until November 22nd, and I know I talked a little bit about this course back in June when I did my little pre-launch, but I wanted to talk about it again and just ask you guys to mark your calendars for the real launch if it is something that you guys think would be useful or interesting to you on your journey. And if you find any of the episodes I've done on this podcast about feminine energy or masculine energy or self-worth or confidence or relating to gender and all of the complicated ways that can happen today, if you found any of that or any of my story around these things interesting, I do recommend seriously considering my Feminine Energy Without Bullshit course. And I will be doing a YouTube live to talk a little bit about my feminine energy journey. I'll be doing that this Wednesday, aka tomorrow. So just look at my YouTube, youtube.com/Sabrina Scott, and make sure that you're subscribed so you get a notification when I go live. And actually, let me just double check for you guys the time that I'm going live. So it will be noon, 12 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday. So do make sure that you listen to that. And that's not going to be me selling the course, even though I do believe in the course. It's going to be me, for the most part, just talking about my journey, right? With this feminine energy stuff and why I've started to teach about this. Even though I was non-binary for like 20 years and have talked a lot about gender in critical ways, I feel like my embodiment has shifted, my mindset has shifted, and I feel like I've just matured and grown and learned a lot over time, and I just wanted to share that journey with y'all. So put that on your calendar, put the launch on your calendar, and feel free to reach out to me as well with any questions that you might have about feminine energy or the course or anything like that. And who knows, maybe I might even make your request for information about feminine energy an inspirational topic for one of the podcast episodes for this show. So don't be a stranger. Feel free to reach out. So anyway, on to the topic for today, which is that situationships are bad for women. They just are. Let's talk about it. So why am I talking about all these issues that are like women dating issues? Why? Because as someone who's been doing this work for a bazillion years and reading tarot for people, by the way, if you want to book a reading, you can do so at sabrinamscott.com/readings. I would love to read for you. But it's like being in this position and reading cards for so many people for so long, love and relationships is the most number one asked for topic when I'm working with people one-on-one in a tarot reading situation. It's just, a thing. Like, and it's not going to be the thing for everybody. Like, for other folks, it's going to be work, or it's going to be family, or it's going to be something else. But it is one of the top concerns of a lot of people, and a lot of people being the women that I work with, and most of my audience is women. So here we go. So situationships, not a good vibe. Ultimately, I don't think situationships is really like in integrity for anybody, like regardless of gender, but I think, and like regardless of sexual orientation, but I think especially for women who are dating men, I really don't think the situationship benefits anyone. So in case you guys don't know, I'm pretty sure everyone does, but just in case you don't, a situationship is when people kind of act like they're in a relationship, but they kind of have no official like label. Like, they see each other all the time, they probably have sex, they, are just constantly around each other, they, watch Netflix, they do sleepovers, whatever. So it's kind of a situation, it's kind of a relationship, but it's kind of not. Like, there's no official commitment anywhere to be seen. There is no label. Like, no one really knows what's happening. No one really knows where anything is going, if anywhere. And so this usually happens, I find. I haven't been in one of these in like, I don't know. I've never really done situationships, but I've observed it. And so from what I've observed, and maybe you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, well, from what I have observed, they tend to be the most common among people who have kind of mismatched desires. Like, the guy probably has just said, I really like spending time with you. Like, let's just keep having sex and hanging out. And the girl is usually like, yeah, sounds great, even though she kind of secretly wants a relationship and has kind of maybe developed feelings, and maybe the sex is really good and the dude is kind of fun to hang out with and easy and just like whatever. But she kind of wants more, but like more isn't really happening. But there's this idea that you can't really ask for more because then you're being too much. And so then what just ends up happening is like a kind of like committed, not committed thing where people are just like having sex and kind of doing a lot of the things that people would do in a relationship, but there's no commitment and there's no future. There's no future. Like, there's no urgency. There's no definition. There's no like really anything happening. It's like a weird situation. And so these often leave women in a limbo. And like, I've never really heard a man complaining about a situationship where he feels in limbo. I'm sure there are some men who have felt that and who have gone through that. Maybe even some of y'all listening. So I know there was like 3 men who listen to this podcast. Maybe some of y'all have been through that. I don't know. But I do know that it's very uncommon for men to feel that way with a situationship. Usually they're like, cool, I'm getting access to easy sex all the time without really having to provide any emotional support. So that works great for me. I get my needs met and I just get to like, live life and wait for the one to come along. And I find that is like usually how it goes. And so often then the woman will be the one who has her heart broken, who ends up compromising her values, her boundaries, her self-respect, kind of waiting around twiddling her thumbs to see if this guy will ever commit or will ever change and value her and commit to her and see her in the way that she sees herself, which is as a catch. And so obviously I think a lot of women are catches who end up in this situation. But unfortunately, it's very, very common. I have so much to say about this. So I feel like part of the reason why situationships are so common is because of this culture of devaluing sex, where sex is plentiful and everywhere, and it's kind of normalized that everyone is a bit of a slut and like don't slut shame, and everyone's just having sex and sex means nothing and it's just blah, blah, blah. And so in a culture that devalues the intimacy and trust and respect that is necessary for, I think, good sex, like truly like emotionally healthy sex, because like I know sex can be good and yet not emotionally healthy. It's a topic for a whole other episode. But I think in this culture where everyone is called a prude if you don't fuck on the first date, like it creates this normalization of meaningless sex when in reality, I think especially for women, it's challenging a lot of time to have meaningless sex. Like sex bonds us. It creates these chemicals in our brain and blah, blah, blah. And they're, I have talked, I think, in a previous episode about how when I was a young adult, I was able to have sex like a man. I would just like not care, I would not get attached to anyone. It was like whatever. But I don't think that is the natural state emotionally of most women, right? And so it's so interesting. I remember there was someone in my DMs who was like bragging a bit that like they were having sex with this person with a very fancy job. And I didn't reply. I was just like, oh, good job. Good for you. Like, I didn't reply with what was in my head. What was in my head was, okay, so his job is fancy, but like, and you are getting some kind of ego boost out of having sex with someone with a fancy job. But like, other than sex, like, what is this person giving you? What is this person doing for you? Like, is this person, like, can you rely on them if it's 4 a.m. and like your fire alarm goes off or there's something scary that happens? Like, would this person go with you to the hospital if you weren't feeling well? Like, what is this person to you? Like, sex is easy and in some cases very boring. And I don't mean that like boring in the bad sex type of boring, but I mean it's banal. Finding good sex is very easy to do, honestly, in my opinion. It's like not difficult. And so it's not that, like, it is special, obviously, but it's like just finding a body with whom you have chemistry sexually is not a very difficult thing to do. Like, what about everything else? What about the respect? What about the reliability? What about emotional closeness? What about emotional intimacy? What about all of these other things that are a little bit deeper and that actually allows sex to go even deeper? You know what I mean? And so I don't know the full situation of this example, but if I was going to guess, I would guess that that was a situationship that was going on with that. And so people become very satisfied with very little, and I think often people are like, oh, well, the sex is amazing, and so I can't cut this off, and I can't ask what this is, and people get kind of blinded by the good sex, and the fact that there is sex, like, people like to feel wanted, and I think I've talked about in another episode of this podcast that a lot of women struggle with self-acceptance and confidence, and being seen as sexually desirable to somebody can soothe some of that like internal gaping void of, a lack of having done the inner work to build the self-confidence and the self-esteem to be whole in and of ourselves. But that's another topic. And so I think this whole mishmash of things is what leads a lot of women into a situationship. And I really do believe situationships are bad for women. I think situationships are just women accepting crumbs. I think situationships are women not having the self-esteem and the self-respect and the self-love to realize that they deserve the whole fucking meal and an appetizer, or maybe 2 appetizers, or maybe 3, and dessert, and then a second dessert, and then also a glass of wine. Like, it's not just crumbs. And I think that so many women are so living in a scarcity mindset of, oh my God, no one else is going to fuck me as good as this person will, or no one's going to be nice to me. No one's going to do as much as this person does. And so I'm going to be happy with the bare minimum. Because I think a lot of women think that there is nothing better out there, that there's like a kind of scarcity of good men. All the good ones are taken. I've heard that so many times. I don't think it's true. I've heard so many of these limiting beliefs and these kind of mindset, like negative mindset, limiting mindset type of stuff from a lot of women. And I think that is just something that is going to hold back a lot of women. I think it's going to keep a lot of women in a situationship type of vibe where they're not really fully getting their needs met, but it's like good enough, but like it's not really what we want. And so I think it keeps a lot of women in this space of not being really fully happy. And yet kind of accepting less because they don't want to rock the boat, because they don't want to jeopardize what they have, because maybe they do kind of like what they have, even though it's not exactly what they want. And so I think all of that is really pertinent when we talk about this idea of the situationship. And so if you're someone who is in a situationship right now, what I would say is, what are you really getting out of the situation? Does it really benefit you? Maybe take a step back, maybe do some journaling, some brainstorming on what your ideal relationship would be, what your ideal love life, sex life would look like, and compare and contrast that to what you're getting right now. You know, are you getting something where you feel valued and important and respected? Or do you feel like you're getting something a little bit different? And situationships are not inevitable, and I have pretty much never seen a situationship turn into a relationship or anything actually committed or actually serious. And so if everyone's okay with everything being lackluster and kind of crumb-tacular, then go hard. But I think if people are honest with themselves, a lot of women don't actually want that and would prefer something a little bit more well-rounded. And so I think the first part of all of this is honoring and naming your desires and being willing to embrace that with your full chest, to say it, to own it. Be like, you know what? I don't just want to have random hookups with someone I watch Netflix with. I have a grander vision for my life. And I think it's so important to name that, claim that, say that out loud, journal it, scream it from the rooftops, write it in your Bumble profile. I don't know, just own it. I think a lot of people are afraid to admit that they want actual love, that they want an actual real connection. I think a lot of people are like, oh, it'll happen when it happens, whatever. And that's fine. But I think a lot of people are also so shy and afraid to admit their vulnerability in desiring love, desiring a full meal. And it always makes me sad, honestly, when anybody, but specifically when women, are afraid to name and claim their and our desires in life, but specifically when it comes to dating and relationships. There is this fear of ending up alone, and I think that fear of ending up alone in the long term, but also a fear of being alone in the short term, it keeps a lot of women stuck in these bullshit situationships where, yeah, you might be getting regular sex and order in burgers once a week, but ultimately, don't we all have a greater vision for our lives than that? And unfortunately, I think the more women that accept and normalize situationships, the lower dating standards become for women, right? The more we accept this, the more a lot of men think that they can behave that way and it's totally normal and fine. Whereas it should be embarrassing for men to offer women so little. And again, I'm speaking very heteronormatively, but feel free to translate this into whatever your particular gender and dating situation is, right? But if a lot of women are accepting situationships as a fine, normal thing, then a lot of men don't feel like they need to offer women anything more than that. And so it's just this horrible cycle of the bar is in hell, the standards are in hell, right? And it's just not good. It's not good. And so if you are in a situationship right now and you are listening to this, my hope is that you end that thing because it is not going anywhere. It's not becoming a relationship. It's not becoming anything good. It's just going to be a breadcrumb forever, basically. And that is no way to live. Dare to dream and ask for more. Have those standards. I remember in my mid-20s, there was someone who I really liked. and who was a bit older than me, lived in a different city, but whenever we were in the same city, we would spend a ton of time together. And this guy would treat me so well, would take me out, thought I was like the coolest, most awesome person ever. But I knew that he was kind of seeing someone else. That was also a situationship, but like probably a more serious situationship. And so basically I kind of realized like I don't want to be situationship number 2. Like, I don't care how good you treat me and how much you like me. And yeah, I know we live in different cities and maybe things would be different if that wasn't the case. But it just really rubbed me the wrong way. And eventually it kind of pissed me off. And I realized, you know what? Like, I can't live my life acting as though this is acceptable. Like, even though I'm having fun in the short term, ultimately it kind of decays my soul, to be honest. And it was really hard connection to walk away from. And like, we're still cool and like comment on each other's social media every once in a blue moon. Like, there's no bad blood. But I just had to say, like, you know what? Like, I know you're doing as much as you can for me right now, or as much as you want to for me right now, given the circumstances. But this really isn't enough for me. And you know what? My dating life really started improving a lot after I made that call. Because I decided I was worth more than just being someone's situationship number 2. And so if you're listening to this, if you're in a situationship, I believe that you are worth more than that, my friend. Basically, I've decided I would rather be alone. I'd rather be writing. I'd rather be making art. I'd rather be planning new courses, taking a bath, reading books, going on walks, hanging out with friends. I'd rather be doing that than spending time with someone who just sees me as an option, aka breadcrumb giver, aka situationship land. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, there's so much else in life that is possible and beautiful, and it can be hard to take that leap away, but honestly, I would really recommend doing it if you find yourself in that situation. Not easy, but gets easier the more you do it, and then it just becomes second nature, and then it just becomes how you live. You just don't accept bullshit. Okay, friends, that's it for today. Hopefully I'll see you guys on my YouTube for the tarot cards of the day at 11 a.m. Eastern time today. youtube.com/Sabrina Scott. View live at 11 a.m. Eastern time, or check out the replay whenever you can. All right, friends, talk soon. Bye.